Recently, Microsoft officially ended support for Windows 10. Now, the phrase end of support sounds bureaucratic. It sounds like something that happens in a corporate memo and means very little in practice. But in this case, the consequences are real, measurable, and already affecting hundreds of millions of people worldwide. According to research firm Canalys, roughly 240 million PCs cannot upgrade to Windows 11 due to hardware incompatibility. That number comes from a formal industry analysis and represents approximately 1 in 5 Windows devices on the planet. Your Windows 10 machine did not suddenly stop working on October 14, 2025. Microsoft was clear about this. The operating system continues to function. Your files are still there. Your application's still open. Nothing was remotely switched off. What stopped was something less visible but far more consequential: security updates. Every month, Microsoft releases what are called Patch Tuesday updates, a batch of fixes for newly discovered vulnerabilities in its operating systems. These are the patches that close the doors that hackers try to walk through. After October 14th, those patches stopped being issued for Windows 10. The last one was delivered on that date, and that was it. What this means in practice is a slow, accumulating risk. On day 1 after support ended, your machine was essentially as secure as it had been the day before. But every week that passes, new vulnerabilities get discovered in Windows. On Windows 11 and other supported systems, those vulnerabilities get patched. On Windows 10, they do not. They sit open. And over time, that gap between a patched system and an unpatched one grows into something genuinely dangerous. This is not speculation. We have seen this pattern before. Windows 7 reached the end of support in January 2020. Within months, threat actors were actively targeting known, unpatched vulnerabilities in Windows 7 machines. Ransomware campaigns specifically sought out organizations still running unsupported Windows versions, because those organizations were, effectively, defenseless against certain attack vectors. Security company ESET estimated that in Germany alone, 32 million PCs were still running Windows 10, even as the deadline approached. Globally, the numbers are staggering. StatCounter data from late 2024 showed Windows 10 still running on approximately 63% of Windows PCs worldwide. Even accounting for upgrades in the months surrounding the deadline, tens of millions of machines are now operating without the security net that regular updates provide. The 240 million figure comes from Canalys, a respected technology market research firm. Their analysis found that roughly a fifth of the global Windows installed base, 240 million devices, cannot upgrade to Windows 11 because they do not meet the hardware requirements Microsoft set for the new operating system. That is the critical point here. This is not about people choosing not to upgrade. This is about machines that are physically incompatible with Windows 11, regardless of the owner's willingness to move forward. These are machines that, from a hardware standpoint, Windows 11 simply refuses to run on, at least not in an officially supported configuration. Why did Microsoft set hardware requirements that would cut off so many existing machines? When Microsoft launched Windows 11 in October 2021, it introduced a set of minimum hardware requirements that were significantly stricter than what Windows 10 had demanded. The most controversial of these is the requirement for a Trusted Platform Module, version 2.0, commonly referred to as TPM 2.0. A TPM is a dedicated security component, either a physical chip on the motherboard or a firmware-based equivalent built into the processor. It handles hardware-level security functions, storing encryption keys, verifying system integrity during boot, and supporting features like BitLocker disk encryption and Windows Hello authentication. Microsoft's position is that TPM 2.0 is foundational to the security architecture of Windows 11, and it has repeatedly described this requirement as non-negotiable. The problem is that TPM 2.0 only became standard in consumer PCs around 2016 and later. Many business and consumer machines bought before that, or even between 2016 and 2018, either lack it entirely or have an older TPM 1.2 chip that does not meet the requirement. Beyond the TPM, Windows 11 also requires processors from specific generations, generally Intel 8th generation or newer, or AMD Zen 2 or newer. Machines running older Intel Core, i5 or i7 processors from 2015 or 2016, for example, are blocked regardless of how much RAM they have or how fast their storage is. Think about what that means in practical terms. A person who bought a well-spec'd laptop in 2016 for a significant amount of money is running a machine that is, by many practical measures, still fast enough for everyday tasks. Web browsing, document editing, and video calls, it handles all of that. But because it was manufactured before TPM 2.0 became standard and before Intel's 8th generation chips shipped, it is now stranded. Windows 10 is no longer supported, and Windows 11 will not officially support it. Microsoft's stated reasoning is security. The company argues that hardware-level security features are now essential to protect against modern threats, particularly ransomware, credential theft, and attacks that target the operating system at a low level. That argument has genuine merit, but critics, including Canalys, have pointed out that the effect is to strand a massive number of functional machines, pushing users toward new hardware purchases at a time when the environmental and financial costs of doing so are significant. It is also worth noting that workarounds exist. Technical users have found ways to install Windows 11 on unsupported hardware using registry edits during installation, or tools like Rufus, which can create installation media that bypasses the compatibility checks. Microsoft acknowledges these methods exist, but warns that machines running Windows 11 on unsupported hardware may not receive future updates and could experience compatibility issues. It is an unsupported path, not a clean solution. The 240 million number takes on a different weight when you consider where those machines are likely to end up. Canalys estimated that the weight of 240 million discarded PCs would amount to approximately 480 million kilograms of electronic waste. To put that in perspective, Reuters, reporting on the same analysis, noted that this would be equivalent to roughly 320,000 automobiles. Electronic waste is one of the fastest-growing waste streams on the planet. According to Statista, global e-waste was projected to reach 74.7 million metric tons by 2030. The potential addition of millions of perfectly functional Windows 10 machines that simply lack a compatible chip adds meaningfully to that problem. Canalys noted that the refurbishment market, which typically gives second lives to older PCs by wiping them and reselling them, faces a specific problem here. A refurbished machine running an unsupported operating system is extremely difficult to sell. Businesses will not buy it. Most consumers will not touch it once they understand it receives no security updates. Even charitable donation programs, which often place older PCs with schools or community organizations in lower income regions, face obstacles because putting an unsupported, unpatched machine in front of a student who's going online is not the responsible option it once was. The result is that a large number of machines that are mechanically sound and operationally capable are heading toward landfills simply because of a software requirement they cannot satisfy. Microsoft did not simply cut everyone off and walk away. The company introduced what it calls the Extended Security Update Program, or ESU, which provides critical security patches for Windows 10 beyond the October 2025 deadline, but at a cost. For individual consumers, Microsoft priced the ESU program at $30 for 1 year of continued security updates, extending coverage through October 2026. For businesses, pricing scales with the number of devices. The program covers security classified patches only, no new features, no bug fixes beyond security-related ones, and no technical support. This is not without precedent. Microsoft offered similar extended support programs for Windows 7 and Windows 8.1 when those operating systems reached end of life. In those cases, the programs were primarily aimed at businesses that needed more time to migrate large fleets of machines. The consumer ESU offering for Windows 10 is relatively new territory. For $30 a year, you buy yourself time. But it is important to understand what you are buying. Continued relevance in terms of security patches, but no path forward. You are still on a platform that Microsoft has deprecated, and at the end of that additional year, October 2026, the same problem reasserts itself. For businesses, analysts at Omdia noted that migration from Windows 10 to Windows 11 has been slower than any previous Windows transition. It took 4 years for Windows 11 to reach 50% adoption, compared to 3 years for Windows 10 to reach the same milestone after launch. Enterprise customers with specialized software, proprietary applications, or large fleets of older hardware have found the transition genuinely complicated, and many will be relying on the ESU program as a bridge while they work through that complexity. If you or someone you know is on Windows 10 right now, the situation is not hopeless. There are real, concrete paths forward. Option 1, check if your machine can actually upgrade. Before assuming you are stuck, use Microsoft's PC Health Check tool, which is available for free. A significant number of machines that appear incompatible are actually capable of running Windows 11. They simply need a setting enabled in the system firmware. Option 2, upgrade the hardware to Windows 11. If your machine genuinely cannot run Windows 11, and you depend on it for work, finances, or anything involving sensitive personal data, the practical advice is to budget for a new machine. Windows 11 PCs are available at a wide range of price point. Option 3, pay for the ESU and plan your migration. If a new machine is not currently possible, the $30 Extended Security Update subscription buys you a year of continued security patches. That is a reasonable stopgap if you use it as exactly that, a bridge to a planned upgrade, not a permanent solution. Option 4, switch to Linux. This is not for everyone. but it is a legitimate option that deserves mention, without exaggeration. Linux distributions like Linux Mint have been specifically designed to feel familiar to Windows users. They run efficiently on older hardware, they receive ongoing security support, they are free, and for users whose daily computing involves web browsing, email, document editing, and video streaming, they cover the necessary ground. Option 5. Google's Chrome OS Flex. Google offers Chrome OS Flex as a free operating system designed to run on older PCs. It is lightweight, receives ongoing updates, and focuses primarily on web-based applications. For users who do most of their work in a browser, this is a viable path that keeps the hardware useful without the security exposure of an unpatched Windows 10 installation. There is a legitimate question embedded in all of this that goes beyond any individual user's situation. Microsoft is a company with an obvious financial interest in people buying new PCs. Hardware manufacturers pay licensing fees. Windows is a platform that drives ecosystem value, and a wave of 240 million machines needing replacement is, from a certain angle, a significant commercial opportunity. Canalys noted directly that the end of Windows 10 support was expected to stimulate PC market growth, forecasting an 8% expansion in 2024 as customers sought to refresh their hardware. That does not mean the security rationale for Windows 11's requirements is dishonest. TPM 2.0 does provide real security benefits. Modern hardware does enable features that older machines cannot support. The argument for a hardware security baseline is not fabricated, but the effect, intentional or not, is that functional machines are being deprecated at a scale and speed that the refurbishment market, the e-waste recycling sector, and individual consumers have not been given adequate time or tools to manage. When roughly a fifth of the world's Windows PCs are pushed toward landfill status because of a chip requirement, it raises questions about the shared responsibility between software vendors, hardware manufacturers, and policymakers to extend the useful life of technology rather than accelerating its disposal. This is a conversation happening in the industry. Canalys made the point explicitly that operating system vendors have a role in enabling circular IT models. Designing software that extends the useful life of hardware rather than shortening it is both an environmental and an economic issue. The EU has been exploring the right to repair and longevity regulations for consumer electronics. Whether those frameworks eventually apply meaningful pressure to operating system lifecycle decisions remains to be seen. The broader story here is one that the technology industry is going to keep grappling with: the tension between the security rationale for new hardware requirements and the reality of 240 million machines, whose owners now face a decision they were not entirely prepared for. Microsoft made a call. The consequences are in motion. What you do next is still in your hands.